Ever feel like some people, approach relationships like it's a business deal, like they're just trying to get the best possible return on their investment, so to speak. It's kind of a strange way to think about it, right?
Yeah, it can feel a little cold, I guess.
It is a little cold, a little calculating, but that's what we're going to be diving into today. This idea of exchange in relationships. We're calling this deep dive social exchange theory, and it gets into some really interesting aspects of how we connect with each other.
And you might be surprised to learn that this concept of exchange in relationships, it's not exactly a new idea.
Oh, really? I thought this was like some modern psychology thing.
Nope. It actually goes way back. Even ancient societies, relationships weren't just based on, purely personal feelings.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So, like, what kind of examples are we talking about here?
Well, think about the tradition of dowry, for instance.
Dowry. Okay, yeah.
On the surface, it might seem like a purely cultural practice, right? But you can also see it as evidence of this underlying system of exchange happening within a marriage.
So it's like, even back then, marrying someone wasn't just about, like, love and all that romantic stuff.
Exactly.
There was this element of, like, families forming alliances and strategically managing resources.
You got it. The anthropologist, Marcel Mauss, he actually found that even in societies that we might consider primitive, marriage involved a pretty structured system of social exchange.
Wow. That's really shifting my perspective a bit. Like, suddenly I'm thinking about all my relationships in this new light. Like, maybe there's always this underlying exchange going on, even if we're not, like, consciously aware of it.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Even in friendships,
Okay, yeah.
the ones that thrive, they usually have that kind of balance of support and shared experiences, like a natural give and take.
That actually makes a lot of sense to me. I've got to admit, as an INTJ, I used to find socializing kind of like mysterious.
I can see that.
But once I started to grasp this idea of like purposeful exchange, it just clicked. Like, oh, we connect with others based on what we can offer each other and what we need in return.
I think a lot of people can relate to that, actually. It can make social interactions feel a lot more purposeful, don't you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It takes away that feeling of like randomness. It makes
Right.
things feel more intentional. But how does this exchange actually play out like on a day-to-day basis? It's not like we're literally trading goods and services all the time, are we?
No, not always that, literally, no. It's a lot more subtle than that most of the time. The sociologist Peter Blau, he identified three main mediums of exchange. The first one's the most obvious, it's material.
Okay, so like money,
Money, yeah.
goods, services.
Exactly. Think about paying for a meal,
Right.
doing a favor for a friend.
Yeah. Okay, that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah,
But what about all the less tangible stuff? How do you measure like a shoulder to cry on?
right. That's where the non-material mediums come in. Things like time, emotional support, recognition, even just like listening to someone vent about their day.
Oh, I get it.
Like imagine you're comforting a friend who's going through a tough breakup.
Right.
You're exchanging that emotional labor for trust, for the potential for them to reciprocate in the future.
So it's like building social capital.
Hmm.
But isn't it kind of a cynical way to look at goodwill? Like
Yeah.
something you can just like bank?
It's not about being cynical, I don't think. It's more about recognizing that these exchanges, they really contribute to the strength of the relationships. And that leads us to the third medium of exchange, social capital itself.
Okay.
This one includes networks, access to information, the opportunities that come your way because of who you know.
So like mentorship
Hmm?
or being introduced to influential people.
Exactly. That's social capital in action.
Interesting. So it's like social capital is its own kind of currency. Okay, so if everything's an exchange, how do we know if we're getting a good deal? I mean, are we all walking around with these little calculators in our heads, like subconsciously weighing the costs and benefits of every interaction?
Well, Blau suggested that, yeah, we actually do on some level. We're constantly evaluating whether the relationship is worth the investment.
So it's not about being heartless. It's more about making sure the relationship is sustainable
Right.
for both people. But I bet this value assessment is different for everyone, right? Like what I consider a good deal might be a total ripoff to you.
Absolutely.
Ah,
Our
right.
personal experiences, our current circumstances, even our cultural influences, all of that shapes how we value different forms of exchange.
That makes sense. Like someone who grew up in poverty, they might prioritize financial security more than someone who who came from a wealthy background.
Exactly. And someone who's super busy, like an entrepreneur, they might value time above all else.
Whereas a new parent, they might prioritize emotional support.
Exactly. It's like everyone's working with their own unique currency.
Okay, so we've got the basics of social exchange theory down. But how does this actually play out in different types of relationships? Let's start simple. What about business relationships?
Those tend to be pretty straightforward. Clear boundaries, often outlined in contracts. Usually a pretty direct exchange of labor for wages, goods for money, that kind of thing.
Makes sense. Less room for ambiguity there. But what about something as complex as marriage? How does social exchange theory apply there?
Marriage is fascinating because it involves so many different layers of exchange. You could look at it through the lens of Robert Sternberg's triangular theory of love.
Oh, right. Okay, remind me about that one. It's been a while since Psych 101.
Sure. So Sternberg identifies three key components in love: intimacy, passion, and commitment.
Right. Okay. So how do those fit into this exchange theory we're talking about?
Think of it this way. Intimacy. That's an exchange of emotional investment. You share your thoughts and feelings with your partner, and they reciprocate. Passion. That's an exchange of mutual attraction and desire.
Okay, I'm following you.
And commitment. That's an exchange of shared plans and goals for the future.
Wow. So even love has its own set of exchanges.
No,
But let's be real, marriage isn't all hearts and flowers and romantic dinners, right?
definitely not.
There's a lot of practical stuff to navigate, too.
Absolutely.
Sharing finances, emotional support through tough times, maybe even co-parenting.
All party exchange.
It's like this constant negotiation, even if we're not always, like, consciously thinking about it. Speaking of complex relationships, what about the bond between parents and kids?
That one's even more interesting. It goes way beyond simple transactions. Emile Durkheim, a really influential sociologist, he saw parenting as this vital societal function, not just a personal bond.
So it's bigger than just individual families.
Exactly. It's about ensuring cultural continuity. Parents invest a huge amount of time, energy, resources in raising their children, passing on their knowledge, values to the next generation. It's a big exchange.
And what do they get in return?
Besides the immeasurable love and joy and all that, well, parents often have expectations, whether it's emotional fulfillment, feeling that sense of pride in their kids,
Right.
societal validation, even the hope that their kids will take care of them when they're older.
So it's a long-term investment with both emotional and practical returns. But what happens if those expectations aren't met?
Right.
Kids don't always follow the script, right?
That's when things can get tricky. There's often a pretty significant time lag between the investment and the return. And sometimes the return just doesn't match the initial expectations at all.
Yeah, because kids, they're their own people. They make their own choices. It's not a simple transaction, is it? But even with all that, all the potential for things to go, not according to plan, that parent-child bond is still one of the most powerful connections we experience as humans.
It really is. And I think it highlights how social exchange theory can help us understand even those really profound, really deep human connections.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, from like business deals to marriage to even that really intense bond between parents and kids. It seems like no relationship is immune to this exchange dynamic.
You're right. No relationship is. And recognizing that, I don't think it takes away from the importance of genuine emotion or like altruism.
Right.
It's just a way to understand those forces that are kind of working beneath the surface, shaping how we interact with each other.
It's like we've all been speaking this secret language of exchange our whole lives, and we didn't even know it.
Mm-hmm.
But now that we do know it, what can we actually do with this knowledge? How can we apply this to our real lives?
That's the exciting part, right? Understanding social exchange theory, it can give you the tools to approach your relationships with more, I don't know, more awareness, more intention. It doesn't mean you have to become like calculating or manipulative. It's just about being mindful of that give and take that's happening in every connection.
So instead of just like stewing in resentment when we feel like, oh, I'm putting in way more effort than I'm getting back, we can try to take a step back and see where the other person's coming from.
Exactly.
And maybe adjust our own expectations a little bit.
Yeah, and remember, we talked about how everyone has their own currency. What feels like a fair exchange to me might feel totally different to you. So it's
Yeah.
about understanding what
Yeah.
matters to the other person, what they value.
It's like we're all speaking different languages when it comes to relationships.
Right.
But once you understand the other person's dialect, communication becomes so much clearer, and that's got to help you build, stronger, more fulfilling connections.
That's a great way to put it. And it highlights, I think, how important open communication is, empathy in any relationship, whether it's, personal or professional.
Yeah, it's not about like keeping score. It's about understanding the motivations and needs that are driving the other person,
Exactly.
driving their contributions to the relationship. This is really making me rethink some of my own relationships. Like, I have this friend who's always asking me for favors, but they rarely seem to like reciprocate. And I've
Yeah.
always kind of felt resentful about that. But maybe they're not like intentionally being selfish. Maybe they just value different things, and I'm just like totally misinterpreting their actions.
That could be. Or maybe they show their appreciation in ways that you just haven't picked up on yet, Or maybe they're going through something difficult and they need more support than usual. Trying to see things from their perspective, it can really help you navigate the situation.
Like putting on a new pair of glasses,
Wait,
Suddenly you see everything in this whole new light. But honestly, this whole exchange theory thing, it makes me a little nervous.
Oh, how so?
Like, do I have to constantly be analyzing all my relationships, making sure I'm not getting like a bad deal? It feels kind of exhausting.
I hear you. But the goal isn't to turn every interaction into this, cold, calculating transaction. It's just about developing a deeper understanding of the dynamics that are at play, so you can make more informed choices about how you engage with others.
So it's more about awareness than like anxiety.
Exactly. That awareness can help you set healthy boundaries, communicate your needs more effectively, and nurture the relationships that are really, the ones that really nourish you.
Okay, that makes me feel a lot better.
Yeah.
So it's not about keeping a spreadsheet of favors and making sure everything's perfectly balanced.
No.
It's more about being mindful of the energy and resources that we're exchanging.
Precisely. And that mindfulness, I think, can help us build stronger relationships, more fulfilling relationships, really, in all areas of our lives.
This has been really insightful, but I got to ask, if we're not supposed to be keeping score, how do we actually know if a relationship is, balanced and healthy? Are there any red flags we should be looking out for?
That's a good question. And it's tough to give a one-size-fits-all answer, but there are some signs. Like if you consistently feel drained or resentful or undervalued in a relationship, that could be a sign that the give and take is out of whack.
So, like, if it feels like you're always the one giving or supporting or compromising and the other person just isn't really reciprocating,
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
that's a red flag.
Trust your gut on that one. If something feels off, it probably is.
But what if you really care about the person and you want to help them? You want to be there for them. Are you just supposed to walk away if they're going through a rough patch, even if the exchange feels uneven for a while?
No, not necessarily. All relationships, they have their ups and downs, right?
Right.
And there will be times when one person needs more support than the other. That's natural. The key is to communicate,
Okay.
to be open and honest about your needs and your expectations.
So instead of suffering in silence or letting all that resentment build up, we should just have a conversation
Exactly.
about what's working and what's not.
That conversation can actually be a real opportunity. You can renegotiate the terms of the exchange, so to speak, set some healthier boundaries, find ways to support each other more effectively.
I'm starting to see how understanding this whole dynamic can be a real game changer for our relationships.
It can be.
It's like we're learning the secret code to unlock all these healthier, happier connections.
I love that analogy. And the more you practice this, the more you bring this awareness and this intention to your interactions, the more natural it'll become.
So it's not about becoming like a social exchange theory expert.
No.
It's about, finding ways to apply these principles
Right.
in a way that feels, authentic and empowering.
Exactly. And that's what makes this theory so valuable. It's not about reducing relationships down to these cold, impersonal transactions. It's about gaining a deeper understanding of the human dynamics that are really driving all of our connections.
It's like having a superpower, the power to understand, to navigate, to even strengthen those relationships that matter most to us.
I like that. And remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
Right. So how do we use this newfound knowledge wisely and ethically.
Mm.
What are some practical tips for applying social exchange theory like in our day-to-day lives?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's one we're going to tackle in our next segment. We'll dive into some concrete strategies for using social exchange theory to build those stronger, more fulfilling relationships.
Okay, so we're back. And I am ready to like actually put all this social exchange theory knowledge to work. Give me those practical tips you promised. Like how can we use this stuff to actually, make our relationships better?
All right, let's get tactical. Tip number 1, pay attention to the currency.
Okay.
We've talked about how different people value different things. So instead of just assuming everyone wants the same kind of exchange, try to really understand what matters to the other person.
So like if my friend is a super busy entrepreneur, maybe offering to, I don't know, help them with some task that takes a lot of time would be more valuable than like baking them cookies or something.
Exactly. It's about tailoring your contributions to their needs, to what they actually value.
Got it. Currency check. What's the next pro tip?
Don't be afraid to speak up, to communicate your own needs.
Okay.
We often, I think, assume that people should just kind of know what we want, but that can lead to like misunderstandings and resentment, all that.
Yeah.
So try being more direct about what you value. What kind of exchange would make you feel appreciated?
So instead of getting all like passive aggressive when my partner forgets to do the dishes for the 100th time, I should just be like, hey, helping out more around the house would really make me feel like loved and supported.
Exactly. And it's not about like demanding things or keeping score.
Right.
It's just about expressing your needs in a clear, respectful way.
Communication is key. Okay, what else?
Be mindful of reciprocity.
Okay.
It's not about keeping a strict tally, of course.
Right.
But a healthy relationship, it usually has, that natural flow of give and take. So if you notice that you're consistently the one investing more time, more energy, more resources, it might be time to address that.
So let's say I'm always the one like planning get-togethers with friends.
Yeah.
Or, I'm always one offering a listening ear.
Yeah.
Doing favors. But it's rarely reciprocated. Is that like a sign that maybe I need to reassess the relationship?
It could be. It might be a good time to have a conversation about it. See if you can find a better balance.
Reciprocity check.
Yeah.
What else? What else should we be keeping in mind?
This one's a big one. Set healthy boundaries. That's so important for preventing resentment and burnout. And it's okay to say no.
Oh, yeah.
To requests or demands that feel, I don't know, draining or unfair.
So if that same friend who's always like asking me for favors but never has time for me, if they like ask for another one, it's okay to just politely decline.
Absolutely. You don't have to sacrifice your own well-being to maintain a relationship. Sometimes saying no is the healthiest thing you can do, actually.
Boundaries are essential. Okay, this is all such good advice, but what if you've tried all this stuff and the relationship still just feels like off?
Sometimes, despite our best efforts, a relationship just runs its course.
Yeah.
And that's okay. It really is. Recognizing when it's time to move on, that's a valuable skill too.
So it's not a failure if a relationship ends.
Not at all. Sometimes it just means, you've outgrown each other, your needs aren't aligned anymore, and that frees you up to invest in other relationships that are more fulfilling, more reciprocal.
This whole deep dive it's been really eye-opening. I feel like I have this whole new perspective on relationships.
I'm so glad to hear that. It really is. It's fascinating how understanding these dynamics can empower us to make more conscious choices about how we connect with others.
So like what's the one big takeaway that you want our listeners to walk away with from all of this?
Remember that relationships they're a two-way street. They thrive on mutual respect, open communication, and a balanced exchange of value. I think by understanding these principles of social exchange, we can really build stronger connections, healthier connections, the kind that enrich our lives.
That's a great way to sum it all up. And to everyone listening, remember, it's not about keeping score.
No.
It's about being mindful of that give and take.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes relationships really thrive.
Exactly.
All right, that's it for our deep dive on social exchange theory. Big thanks to our expert for sharing all this incredible knowledge with us.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
And to all of you listening, thanks for joining us. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to all the research we talked about today. Until next time, happy exchanging.